Hi.
Alright, hello guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're brand new here, my name is Nikki and this is my book nook, and today we are doing my June reading wrap up. I read about 19 or 20 books this month, and you might be thinking like, oh my gosh, Nikki, that is such a good reading month. And yes, it was, but also I've just been kind of going through it recently. I don't know what it is. Honestly, I do know what it is. I feel like once a year or so, I go through this phase where romance books just start to kind of depress me, like rom-com types of books. I just can't read them. They start to feel so fluffy and just so like, ugh, I don't know. I just am not in the mood. And then dark and spicy, smutty romance books right now kind of like are just all running together for me. I read one book at the beginning of June that just blew my mind and altered my brain chemistry, and honestly ever since then I feel like the spicy stuff, it's just not hitting the same. So I have been struggling. I DNF'd more books this month than I feel like I DNF'd in the entirety of 2022, and we'll definitely talk about those books because I read a good chunk of all of them, so I feel like I can still kind of speak to them. But really the only thing that's been able to hold my attention in the past month are thrillers. Like June was truly my month of thrillers. I've been kind of like dipping my toes in them, but this month I just went all out because like I said, they were kind of the only thing that held my attention, that were interesting me. So I just like rode the wave and I read so many of them. So we'll talk about everything, but I do think I want to start with the thrillers because there are quite a few. So yeah, let's just get into it. So first up, I read Insomnia by Sarah Pinborough. This is about a woman that had a very traumatic childhood. Her mother, around the time that she turned 40, right at her 40th birthday, essentially went crazy and did something horrible and got her and her younger sister taken away. And ever since then, she always, like growing up, her mom always like kind of knew she was going crazy and always specifically told her that she was gonna go crazy as well and that she was like messed up in the head just like she was. So her entire life she's been stressing out, looking forward to her 40th birthday, thinking that she's gonna go insane like her mother did basically. So that time is approaching. She's only like a few weeks away from her 40th birthday. She is now married, has a child of her own, and things right about the time that they're supposed to start going a little bit weird. She cannot sleep. She has insomnia just like her mother did. Every night she's kind of waking up at the same time, cannot sleep for the life of her. She's groggy during the day. She's starting to question what she's seeing. Just lots of creepy things are starting to happen that she can't explain. Her child as well is starting to kind of like act very weird, is drawing very creepy drawings, saying it's things that he's seeing in the night, saying that it's her, the mother, just all sorts of things are all over the place. So that's kind of what this story is about, like figuring out what is real, what is not, you know, what happened to the mother. It definitely has like a twist ending to it. Overall, I liked it for sure, but it was a little bit slow paced and it didn't go where I think, or where I thought it was gonna go. So it was pretty good, but not what I thought it was gonna be. And then next, I read The Villa by Rachel Hawkins. I absolutely loved this book. I was kind of looking up thriller recommendations because I always think about Verity by Colleen Hoover when I think about thrillers, because I feel like ever since I read that book, there hasn't been a book that has given me like jump scares in the same type of way. So I ended up looking up a whole list of books that kind of have the same vibe, and that's where I found this one, and I was immediately drawn in because it said it was a combination, or it was inspired by a combination of Fleetwood Mac, the Manson murders, and I guess Mary Shelley, when she was writing Frankenstein, went and stayed at this castle with this man. So it's a combination of like all of those stories inspired it, and I was like, okay, Fleetwood Mac, say less. The Manson murders, a creepy twist to it. I was very into it. So pretty much it follows this woman that is a writer. She's been a struggling writer. The past year of her life has gone really just like not well. Her relationship has fallen apart. Her husband has divorced her. She's been suffering from a chronic illness along with writer's block, and she has this friend that has been best friends with her entire life, and it turns out that she actually is a writer as well, except she is a very successful writer. She's a self-help writer, and pretty much her friend says, you know, I can see that you're struggling. I can see that, you know, you need to get a book written. I am renting this villa in Italy this summer. Just come and stay with me. Let's hang out, you know, write your next book. It'll be a good time. So we're seeing that story going on present day while we're also at the same time flashing back to the past because another story took place at this very same villa in Italy. Basically, it was the setting of this really just like insane thing that happened, kind of one of the biggest mysteries in rock history. A couple of rock stars that were world famous back in the 70s went and stayed at this villa together over the summer to, you know, same sort of thing, write some music, get some inspiration. They brought their girlfriends along with them, a couple of groupies, and basically one of the rock stars ended up dead by the end of the trip, and it's always been like a really crazy talked about thing. So and also one of the girlfriends of the rock stars actually went on to become pretty much the most notorious horror author of all time. She wrote this really popular book called Lilith Rising. So now, like present day, the author that is there is kind of like uncovering the history of what happened at this villa that summer, you know, the author of Lilith Rising, what she went through. And so you're seeing both stories kind of play out at the same time, and it was so interesting. Both timelines had me so intrigued. Like, I just didn't want to stop reading it because I had to know what happened. It's one of those everything is not what it seems kind of books. You don't know who to trust. Both of your narrators feel kind of like unreliable in a way, and I just absolutely loved it. It was a total thriller, but it had like summer vibes because of the like Italy villa setting. I absolutely love this book. I'm gonna check out more by Rachel Hawkins for sure. Okay, and then next I read all of Geneva Rose's thrillers. I did not realize that she only had 3. I have heard her name so many times that I figured she was like, you know, a thriller author that had like 10, 15 books at this point. But no, she only has 3, and I read all of them back to back because I didn't realize that. I definitely would have held out and saved one of them because I loved every one of her books. Like, they just completely drew me in. Every single one had such a twist ending. I never knew where it was gonna go. I just loved all of these books. The first one, and the one that I think is my favorite, is called You Shouldn't Have Come Here. And when I saw this cover, I was just like, this book was made for me. I love a book with a tree on the cover. Say less. I'm gonna buy it. I'm gonna read it. This story is basically about this woman that every year she takes a solo trip. She throws a dart at a map and she goes and she just like takes the time to unplug, unwind, whatever. And so this year she threw her dart at a map and it landed on Wyoming. So she ends up taking this vacation out in the middle of Wyoming, and she rents this Airbnb that is actually a ranch. And when she gets there, she discovers that the host that, you know, owns the ranch, lives on the ranch, is this very, very handsome man. And, you know, she thinks she's gonna be in for a very good time, a very good little relaxing vacation. But things very quickly start to get a little bit weird. She realizes that this town that she's staying in may just be a little bit too small. Between that and dead animals kind of showing up out of nowhere, this woman working on the ranch that doesn't seem to care much for this woman, and just lots of other like little creepy things, like people screaming in the night, just things she can't explain. She starts to wonder if maybe she did not make the best choice by coming here, but at the same time she's trying to have as good of a time as she can. So this thriller is actually so interesting because it's dual point of view. So you see it from the woman's point of view and then also the man that is like the owner of the Airbnb. And this is another one of those stories where you just like never knew who to trust or what was really going on. It was so creepy at times. Like, I was afraid for this woman. There's like no cell service, no Wi-Fi. She ends up having car trouble. Like, there are so many moving parts to this story, and I was just on the edge of my seat. I read the entire thing in one day because I couldn't put it down, and the ending totally blew my mind. So I loved it. And then the next thriller I read by Geneva Rose is called One of Us is Dead. This book reminded me so much of the show Big Little Lies. If you've watched that, I love that show. So right as I got into this, I was like, okay, I feel like I'm in for a good time. This basically follows this group of very wealthy housewives that live in this really small town in Georgia. And the way that they're connected is that they are all members of this salon where you have to pay to have a membership to go there. You have to get a certain number of treatments every month. So pretty much these women, you know, see each other all the time. And, you know, what the story is about is that one of these women, we learned at the beginning, has ended up dead. We don't know who it is whenever the story starts, but, you know, we're seeing these women getting interrogated by this police detective, and then we're also kind of flashing back and seeing the last couple of weeks play out from every one of the women's perspectives. And again, so interesting because you just don't know whose side to be on or what is gonna happen. Like, there's so much going on within this community, like people, spouses kind of like cheating on each other, getting into shady business practices, just, you know, friendships where they're very shallow and they're kind of stabbing each other in the back and everybody kind of wants to be on top, but they're also pretending that they're all best friends. Like there was just so much to it, and it was such an interesting type of story because it was just all about women, and I don't know, it just reminded me so much of that show, and I really liked that show. So if you're into that, you'd probably like this one as well. Also a big twist, as I feel like Geneva Rose is just known for. So good. And then last, I read what is definitely Geneva Rose's most popular book. I've seen this one everywhere. It is called The Perfect Marriage, and this concept was so interesting because it is about this husband and wife that have been married for, I mean, many years now, I think a decade. The husband is a famous writer and the wife is actually a really famous defense attorney. She works all the time. He is a writer, and you know, he is famous, but he's been struggling the last few years to put out a new book. He's been, you know, spending a lot of time trying to write. They actually have this like little lake house that he goes to on the weekends, different nights, whatever, when he needs a change of scenery to write his books. So pretty much at the start of the story, it is a dual point of view story. So you're seeing the wife's perspective, you're seeing the husband's perspective. They definitely love each other, but they've been going through like a bit of a rough patch because the wife has been working so much recently because he hasn't written a book in a long time. So she is the main breadwinner. And so, you know, they've kind of just like had a little bit of a divide in their marriage. But we see that the husband, even though he does love the wife, actually has a mistress and has been having an affair for quite a while now. He meets up with this mistress at that lake house that he goes to write at, and pretty much turns out one morning his mistress is found dead in his bed. She's been stabbed violently, and you know, the husband swears up and down he didn't do it, and the wife has to be notified of this, of course, and now he is very much in need of a lawyer, and it just so happens that his wife is the best defense attorney in town, so she is now having to defend him. So this is kind of, it's definitely a thriller, but it's a little more of a mystery, I feel like, because the entire time you're trying to figure out what happened and who, you know, killed this woman. And as you dive deeper, you just learn that there's a lot going on here, a lot involved with the woman. She has very much of a dark past. A lot has just happened to her, and just so many characters within this story. Like her, she was actually married as well. Her husband is one of the cops that is like investigating this entire thing. It's just a very tangled web of a lot of different things, and the entire time I was just like, who did it? You know, like Geneva Rose is so good at like trying to get you to focus on different things, and I thought that I had it figured out. I would say 3 different times. I was like, it's definitely this person. Oh wait, no, it's this person. Like you would think like, oh, it's so obvious, it's this, but it's never what you think it is. And in the end, I mean, very good. Definitely creepy, definitely a thriller. It wasn't quite what I thought it was gonna be at the end, but still, like, my jaw was on the floor. It was very good. I will for sure be reading whatever other books Geneva Rose decides to put out. Okay, and then next, I decided to dive into some Freida McFadden books because I see people talking about her all the time, and all of her books are on Kindle Unlimited, so we love that. I decided to start with The Housemaid because I have seen everybody and their mother read this book, and once I decided to read it, I fully understand why, because oh my god, this book blew my mind. It's gotta be my favorite thriller I've ever read. It honestly, it topped Verity. It gave me all of those Verity vibes, but times 10. This was just so creepy. I felt like I was going insane. I've never felt so gaslit in my entire life. It was just twist after twist after twist. It was wild. Pretty much it follows this woman that becomes a housemaid, essentially. She's been in prison the last, you know, handful of years, and now she's gotten out and she's been really struggling to find a job. She's been living out of her car, so she comes across this ad to be a live-in housemaid, and it just sounds like the perfect deal for her because she needs a place to stay, you know, she needs a job in general. She applies for it, doesn't think she's gonna get it, doesn't think she'll ever hear back, but she ends up hearing back, and she ends up going to work for this family called the Winchester family. And, you know, they live in a very big, nice house. They're a very wealthy family. The husband works all the time. The wife is kind of more of like a housewife situation. But, you know, it seems like a pretty sweet deal. She moves in. It is a little weird because she has to live in this very tiny room that is like up this creepy hallway. You know, the roof is like slanted. It's practically like a converted attic, but she's like, beggars can't be choosers. I need this job. So ends up, you know, starting to work there, and right away things just start to go a little bit a little bit weird. The wife especially, she just is kind of crazy. I mean, she was just like gaslighting her nonstop to the point where I'm like, did she say that? Did she tell her to do that? Do I need to like flip back the pages and check to make sure that that was said? Because I don't even know at this point. Like, she was just crazy. Like, one minute she was perfectly happy, the next minute she was like yelling at her or whatever. And they have a daughter that was just so creepy and so despicable. Like, honestly, at one point or another, every member of this family scared the shit out of me. I was just, once again, like, I don't know who to trust. I don't know what's going on. Lots unfolds. It's, again, not what you think it's gonna be. And I think there were about 4 plot twists of the story, if I'm like counting correctly. At least 3, if not 4, where I just was like, oh, this is what's happening. No, this is what's happening. Oh my God, no, it's this. It's this. It was so good. Like, seriously, it gave me jump scares in the same way that Verity did, where it was just like, you know, you're stuck under one roof. It was just so creepy. The forced proximity of it. It was amazing. 1000% recommend it. And then next I read Ward D by Freida McFadden. This is about a woman that is in medical school. She is kind of in the part of her medical school where she's starting to do volunteer hours at lots of different types of, you know, like sections of the hospital, trying to figure out what she wants her specialty to be. So she's been really not looking forward to this day, but it is now her time to spend time in the psychiatry ward at this hospital that she volunteers at. And she's been particularly not excited to go and stay at Ward D because it's like a high security, high level psychiatric ward. You know, you go in, the door is locked, there is a PIN number to get out, but if you don't have that PIN number, you cannot open the doors, you're there overnight. There's obviously lots of patients running around that have lots of different, you know, intense disorders and, you know, schizophrenic, just all different ranges of things. Some that are even known to be like aggressive, violent, whatever it might be. So she's not too excited, but she's especially not excited because she actually is familiar with this ward because she had this friend growing up that ended up having a visit in this ward. She's kind of been in and out of it. She went a little bit crazy, but you can kind of tell, like, you're not getting all the information at the start of the story. You can tell that, you know, she's like, my best friend has been in this ward, but maybe it should have been me all along. And you're like, wait, what's going on? So, you know, right away, things are just creepy, not what they seem. Lots of weird things start to happen. There is a patient that is being held in like a solitary confinement room that has like murdered a bunch of people and is actually being transferred to another like super high security ward the next day. But all of the patients are kind of like making mumblings about like, he's gonna get out, he's gonna kill everyone tonight. Like, there's just a lot going on, and it was a very much just like a creepy, scary, you just felt very claustrophobic reading this story, and total twist to it for sure. I liked this one a lot, but it didn't like hit quite as hard as The Housemaid for me, but for sure, like, I read it in like a day and a half. I had to know what was going on. It was just super fast paced, like right out the gate. You were just going full speed ahead. So definitely really liked it. But then after that, I jumped into my next Freida McFadden book. I'm actually reading 5 of them for a reading vlog, so if you want to see like more of my thoughts about these books, it's gonna be a spoiler-free reading vlog, but yeah, you can kind of see me go through the motions. That'll come out probably in a week or so, but I am like halfway through. It's called Never Lie. It's a book about this couple that is a newly married couple. They've been together for about 6 months now. They're looking to buy their first home. They've been looking at lots of different places and properties with their realtor, and the newest property that they're supposed to look at is this house that is kind of like out in the woods, kind of off the beaten path. And so they're going to look at this house together, but there is a winter storm happening, and by the time they get to the house, they're like, this is really far out in the middle of nowhere. By the time they get there, the snow is coming down. You know, they see that a light is on in the house, so they're like, okay, we're gonna go in. Like, the realtor must be here, that's why the light is on. The door is open, they let themselves in, but the realtor is not there. Nobody is there. And you know, they're trying to get a hold of her, but there's no cell service. But at this point, it's like, the roads are snowed over, they can't even move their car. They're like, I guess we might just be stuck here for the night, so we're just gonna have to wait until we can get in contact with our realtor, or at least drive out of here. But they learn that this home is actually the home of this famous psychiatrist that went missing a few years back. She just kind of like out of the blue up and vanished. Nobody really knows what happened to her. Some people think she's dead, but nobody can really know for sure. Like there's no real conclusive evidence. So they're stuck in her house overnight. She's a famous author as well. Both the husband and wife have like read her books. So it's kind of like, okay, this is interesting. And the wife ends up kind of stumbling along the psychiatrist's office where she finds all of these tapes of sessions that she's recorded with different patients and stuff. So she starts to kind of like listen through them, and lots of creepy things come out at the same time she's listening to these tapes. Creepy things are happening in the house, unexplainable things. She starts to feel like they're not alone there, and that's kind of where I'm at so far. It is super creepy. I'm not quite sure where it's gonna go yet, but I'm definitely really liking it. If you wanna know my full thoughts on that, watch out for my reading vlog that's gonna be coming up next week. And then another thriller that I'm about like 2/3 of the way through right now is Daisy Darker by Alice Feeney. Again, I'm really liking this one so far. I read Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney, I think last month or maybe the month before. Loved it, so I knew I wanted to read more by her, but this is about a girl named Daisy Darker. She grew up with these two sisters. They're all named after flowers, and she's just had like kind of a weird upbringing because their parents never really kind of loved them as children, but especially not Daisy. She was the youngest child, and she always says she was born with a broken heart. She's basically died on multiple occasions. Her heart just kind of gives out, and she knows that she's not gonna live a very long life, and so that's always kind of been like a burden on her family. And she's always been really close to her grandmother, and her grandmother lives out on this sort of like island, I guess, where every day, like when the high tide comes in, you can't get on or off of it. So you kind of have to time your travel to get to the island. And so the entire family is reuniting for the first time in quite a while because it is the grandma's 80th birthday. And this birthday is especially interesting because the grandma is very kind of like superstitious and spiritual and a little bit witchy even, you might say. She got like a reading done, like a reading of her future done at one point many years back, where the psychic told her that she would not live past 80 years old. So she's always believed this, and she's always thought like, okay, like I'm gonna die whenever I'm 80. So this is what she believes to be her final birthday. So the family's all getting together with the grandma. Tensions are high. Everybody kind of hates each other, but the grandma's like, okay, I wanna read you guys my will since this is probably my last year, whatever. Long story short, tide gets high, they're all stuck there, and this all happens like literally in the first chapter or two, so I'm not like giving the whole book away, but she kind of reads her will. It's evident that she's not really giving anything to any of the children because they are all spoiled brats. Everybody goes to bed kind of upset. In the middle of the night, there's a crash, they wake up, grandma is laying dead on the floor with like a big gash in her head. So from there, things just start to go like a little bit crazy. It kind of reminded me of Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None, where it's like they're all kind of stuck on this house, on this island with nowhere to go, and kind of one by one, people are starting to like go missing, and it's definitely really good. Like, I'm liking it a lot so far. I'm not sure where it's gonna go, who's responsible, whatever, but so far I would say that I recommend it. Okay, now for the non-thriller books that I read in the month of June. The first one was Mystic Summer by Hannah McKinnon. I honestly don't have a ton to say about this book. I decided to read it because found it, realized that it was set in Mystic, Connecticut, which is a town basically one town over from where my best friend recently moved. So I'm like, okay, that's fun. I'll check it out. I'm looking for some summer vibes. It's a pretty basic story. It's very like Hallmark movie. It's about this girl that grew up in this small town of Mystic, Connecticut, and she, you know, found this high school boyfriend. He was her high school sweetheart. They fell madly in love, but when it came time to go to college, they just wanted different things, went their separate ways. He went off to California, she went to Boston, and now present day, you know, it's been like 10 years. She's working in Boston as a teacher at a private school. She's engaged, and she just recently has found out that she's being laid off from the private school. Funding is being cut, so you know, she now has the summertime to figure out what she wants to do next with her job, like where she wants to maybe go. And she decides she's gonna spend her summer in Mystic, Connecticut because her best friend is actually getting married. So she's just gonna hang out with her family, help her friend plan her wedding. And while she's there, she runs into the high school sweetheart, learns that he has moved back to Mystic and he's actually a single dad now. So it's just kind of like their love story of like reconnecting, and then also just her figuring out what she wants in life. The writing was honestly really good in this book, but there's just like wasn't much to the story for me. I felt like it was one of those where I was like 20% in and I'm just like, okay, I feel like I can literally tell you what happens in the rest of this book. So it was fine, like a quick and easy little beach read if you're looking for that, but nothing like too crazy. And then next I read Same Time Next Summer by Annabelle Monaghan. I had heard through the grapevine that this book was supposed to be a lot like Every Summer After by Carly Fortune, which is still my favorite summer book that I have ever read. That is just one of my favorite books of all time, and I've just been like dying to feel what I felt the first time that I read that book. So if anyone is gonna tell me that a book is like that, I'm probably gonna pick it up. And I have to say, it reminded me of it. I get why I was hearing that, but it wasn't quite that magical. It basically follows this woman that you know, grew up going to stay in this beach town every summer with her parents. They had a beach house there, and she ended up meeting this boy that lived kind of next door, a few houses over, because he also spent the summers there. Growing up, you know, they got close over the years, and eventually it turned into something more. They really kind of fell madly in love. He was her first love, and obviously things just went awry. They ended up going their separate ways. We don't really know what happened between them, but now, present day, she is an adult. She is living in the city, New York City, I think. I think this takes place in like Long Island, if I remember correctly. It's like New York, yeah, Long Island. So she's living like in the city in Manhattan. She's engaged, and she's going home to visit her family because they're looking at possibly having their wedding like in a beach ceremony on Long Island. So she goes home, and she ends up running into the guy from her past, her closest friend that broke her heart. It turns out he has moved back home. We learned that he, you know, had this music career that he wanted to pursue, so he had actually gone to live in California, but now he is back, and so she's having to kind of face him for the first time in many years because they have not spoken since the two of them went their separate ways. So it is similar to Every Summer After in that way, but you're kind of like seeing the story play out. You're alternating timelines. Present day, you're seeing the tension between them, and then you're jumping back to the past and seeing their story play out. And honestly, I just felt like the structure of this story was a little bit odd because it was from the woman's perspective and it was in present day, but then it would jump back to the past, and then the POVs would like alternate. So when it was present day, it was first person point of view. Like it was from the girl's point of view. And then when it jumped to the past, there would be chapters that would alternate. Like there would be like 5 or 6 chapters that were in the past, and it would be like her perspective, his perspective, her perspective, but it was all written in third person. And I just thought that was like a little bit odd. I was like, why is it not just first person? Like it just kind of threw me off. I just thought it was like a little bit different, but I got used to it eventually. But yeah, I mean, obviously, again, it's kind of like a story of what do I really want in life? Is this fiance that I have really, you know, how much do we really have in common? Is he what I want, or is he just what I think that I should want? So yeah, you just kind of see their story play out. I will say, like, you're leading up to what caused these two to go their separate ways, and I really had no idea because as you see their love story, you're just like, they are head over heels obsessed with each other. Like, what could have possibly caused them to separate? And when you do find that out, it is a little bit like, you're like, oh crap, like that's a crappy situation, and I get it. Like I fully get it. Sometimes the reason people, like the friends go their separate ways, it's a little bit like, really? Or sometimes it's just like pure miscommunication, and you know, sometimes you're just like, I feel like we could have just had a conversation and figured this out. But this situation was really tough, so it did kind of shock me. But yeah, in the end, like it was cute, I liked it, but it just didn't blow my mind, so I don't know. And then next, I read Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood. This was her new release for this month. I did a whole reading vlog on this book, so I won't talk about it too much, but I was really disappointed in it, honestly. I absolutely loved Love Hypothesis and Love on the Brain, but this one just, I felt like lacked the magic that Ali's previous books have for me. It pretty much follows this woman that works as an adjunct professor, so she teaches theoretical physics at a couple of different colleges, and she is super broke. She's just recently finished her PhD. She needs a little extra cash, so she actually works on the side as a fake girlfriend. She works for this company, and she has some clients that she'll go with them to different events, whatever, pretend to be their fake girlfriend. But she has this one client that she's had for like 6 months now, so she just goes with him to like family gatherings because he's like in his 30s and his family's always like, why don't you have a relationship yet? Whatever. So she's been his fake girlfriend for a while now, and he has this brother named Jack that she just doesn't get along with. Like, she always senses him watching her, feels like he can see right through her. They kind of have this like weird thing between them, but also this like very undeniable, strange kind of like chemistry. And pretty much the girl in the story, what is her name? Elsie. Elsie realizes that, you know, there's this new job that's up at, I think, MIT, and it's like her dream position. If she gets this job, she can stop doing like all of her little teaching jobs and stop being a fake girlfriend. So she applies for it, and I guess, long story short, there's like drama in the physics community. It's like the theoretical physicists versus the experimental ones, blah, blah, blah. She might not be able to get this job because there's someone on the board for the hiring committee that's an experimental physicist that will probably not want to hire her. And so she goes to like this dinner to schmooze the hiring board, and it turns out that experimental physicist is the brother of her fake boyfriend. So interesting sort of concept. Honestly, I went into it totally blind, didn't know what it was going to be. I thought the concept was interesting, but it just fell super, super flat for me. I just felt like there was no plot to this book. Honestly, after the first like 100 pages, I was just like, where are we going with this? And it was supposed to be like an enemies to lovers, but it just wasn't very enemy-y after like 5 minutes. So I don't know, I didn't love it. If you want to see like my full reaction and thoughts, you can go watch my reading vlog. But yeah, this one was really disappointing because it was one of my most highly anticipated reads of the year, but sometimes that happens. Okay, this next book, I'm scared to talk about. So I'm not really gonna talk about it, but I will just tell you, it's probably my favorite read of the month, and it's probably going to be one of my favorite reads of the entire year. It is called Double Edged by Nyla K. And this is specifically for my dark romance, taboo girlies and guys and everything in between, whatever. If you are trying to feel something, if you feel like you've gotten to a point with your dark romance books, with your taboo books, where like nothing is phasing you anymore and you're just like, okay, yeah, whatever, like reading like the filthiest smut you've ever read just like with a straight face, and you just like want to take it a step further, this book will do that for you. This is the one that I was talking about, where ever since I've read it, I feel like no dark romance or anything spicy is making me feel really anything. It's insane. I will say it's an MMM romance. So three men, major age gap, major taboo. There's a very specific part of this story that is just like inexcusable. I can't even pretend to defend it, but it was so good. It was so good. It was so good. And you know, if it's not for you, it's not for you, and that's perfectly fine. I very much get it. Let's just say you can't even get this book on KU because it's like not allowed. So you'll have to go to Nyla K's website to get the ebook or the paperback if you want it. I give it the highest of recommendations. But let's just say, I always talk about Credence and how it's like one of my favorite books of all time. I always go to war for Credence, and I'm like, okay, at least, you know, I can defend this. He's not really her uncle, you know, they're not really cousins, whatever. Like, chill out. I can't defend that in this book. That's all I'm gonna say. But yeah, obsessed with it. If you might be interested, I will let you go look into it yourself. But yeah, knocked my socks off. But anyways, while we're talking about Credence, I actually have been rereading Credence this month. I am like halfway through right now. I've been doing a reading vlog of it, and it's what's gotten me out of my reading slump. It's hit so hard. I won't even talk about it here because I've just talked about it so many times. It's just one of my favorite books ever. I guess I'll very briefly talk about it. It's about this girl. Her parents suddenly pass away. She's kind of grown up with her parents are celebrities. She's lived a very like privileged life, except her parents like essentially hated her, never talked to her, never showed her love. But now, you know, she's like a couple weeks from turning 18 and her parents have suddenly passed away and she has no other family, or so she thinks. She actually finds out that she has a step uncle, so her dad had a much younger stepbrother that he never got along with, that he was never close with, and he calls to let this girl know that, you know, hey, I know you're in California, I know you'll be 18 in a couple weeks, I live in Colorado, up in this small town in the mountains with my 2 sons. If you want, you're welcome to come live with us, but totally up to you. I'm just putting that out there. We're here for you. They've never met before, so she goes to live with them, and he's not her real uncle. They're not her real cousins because it's a step situation, and the uncle is like young. He's like late 30s, maybe early 40s, and the cousins are in their early 20s, like 20 and 22 or something like that. And the cabin that they live in on this mountain top gets snowed in 6 months out of the year. So lots of things ensue. I love this book with my entire heart and soul. Like, yes, it's taboo. Yes, it's spicy. Yes, it's crazy, but it is so well written, and there are so many beautiful quotes and life lessons in this. Like, I relate to these characters in so many ways, not in the ways you might think, don't be weird, but like just their thoughts, their hopes, their dreams, whatever. I just adore every character in this book so much, and I've had the most fun rereading it. Like, it's hitting even harder than it did the first time, so I've just been having a fantastic time with that. But yeah, those are kind of all the books that I've read this month. I will kind of briefly run through the books that I've DNF'd. It's about 5 of them. I'll kind of go from like the books that I read the most of to the ones I read the least of. First of all, The Devil in the Deep Blue Sea by Elizabeth O'Rourke. I love Elizabeth O'Rourke. I read the first book in this series a few months back. It's one of my favorite books of the year so far. It was called A Deal with the Devil. This is the second book in that series. It's a boyfriend's brother situation, and it's like this girl is going on vacation with her boyfriend's family, and the boyfriend just like sucks. He's the worst. She's a famous singer, he's a famous rock star. He's just like constantly absent, doesn't treat her well, doesn't even show up to the vacation initially because he's like in trouble. So yeah, she starts like bonding with the brother, who they initially don't get along, but the longer they spend together on this like vacation, they bond a little more. It's very much like beachy vibes. It's in Hawaii. It's a very good summer book. I love Elizabeth O'Rourke. I adore her writing, especially like she's such good like slow burn, and by the time you get to the spice, it's so good. But this book was just really slow for me. I read about 65% of it, and I just felt like at the point that I stopped, I just knew what was gonna happen with the rest of the story, and I just like didn't have a desire to read it. You know how sometimes you're reading a book and you read like a chapter and you're just like, okay, I kind of want to take a break now, and it's like just not going very fast. I was just reading this for like a week straight, and I adore her other 2 books I read were total 5 stars for me, but this one was just kind of slow for me. So I read the majority of it, but yeah, it was like nearly 70% when I stopped. So anyways, that was the first one. And then the second one was Serpent in White by Nyla Kay, because I love Double Edge so much. I wanted to jump into another book by her. I don't even begin to know how to describe this book. It is a retelling of the Grimm brothers' tale called the Serpent or something, the snake, the serpent, something like that. It's like kind of a cult community that lives in the woods in a mountain. It really sounded like my kind of vibe. It has sort of like fantasy elements to it. It's an I guess it's a polyamorous like relationship sort of thing. They pretty much like take this drug out in the woods that allows them to like read each other's minds and sort of like see things. It's got lots of like very interesting vibes. It's almost kind of fantasy. It's almost like dystopian, but it's also set in the real world. So it's kind of all over the place. And this was another one where it's like, I liked it, but I was reading it for like 2 weeks and I only got to 55%, and I just felt like I was trudging through it. So I finally had to call it and just be like, I don't think it's for me. So I'm gonna read more by Nyla Kay for sure, but I just like had to stop this one because I was just trudging. And then my next DNF, I read half of Priest by Sierra Simone, and I couldn't do it. I mean, like I said recently, just all the spicy stuff kind of feels like it's running together for me, and this book was just not my thing because it's about a priest that, I mean, this young guy, he's in his late 20s, he decided to go and become a priest because his family went through, you know, he grew up religious, Catholic, and he went through something really traumatic with the church, and he like wanted to be a priest so he could be a better priest than what he grew up with. And you know, he's like sworn himself to the church, whatever, but this new girl shows up in town, comes to confession, and he's just like immediately enamored with her, and there just like wasn't much to this story. And what frustrated me about it was because obviously it's supposed to be like really forbidden, like he's a priest, like he's sworn to celibacy, whatever, but the spice just happened like so fast. Like I would have loved for this story to just be drawn out. Like I wanted to be on the edge of my seat quivering by the time this man gave in to this woman, because like he's not supposed to give in, but he gave in so fast. Like it was like, I feel 15% in or something, and then it was just spice after spice after spice after spice, and I just felt like there was like zero storyline to it, and I just felt like the tension was just broken so early, and I was just like, okay, what's the point? Like I'm just kind of bored. So I don't know, if you just want to read something super spicy, I mean, don't get me wrong, the spice was like very good. I was just kind of bored, so I don't know, I had to stop at 50% in. I just was not into it. So yeah. And then after that, this one I was so disappointed in. I read about 30% of Devious Obsession by S. Massery. This is the second book in the, I guess it's called the Obsession series. I read Brutal Obsession earlier this year. One of my favorites. I absolutely loved it. It's a bully hockey romance, and so I was really excited to see this series continue because it's about the other teammates on this guy's college hockey team. But this book had me feeling like I was crazy because it was literally Brutal Obsession, just like, again, it was the exact same story, like down to like the smallest details. It was the same thing. It was a bully romance. This guy and this girl have this like encounter, you know, at one point, cross paths. The girl ends up becoming a student at this guy's college that he plays hockey at. He doesn't realize, she doesn't realize, I guess, or whatever. He ends up finding her in a bar, cornering her in the bathroom, threatening to make her life a living hell if she doesn't like transfer schools. It's literally exactly what happened in Brutal Obsession, but it just like wasn't as good. I don't know, again, it was just so spicy, so early, so much of it, and I just felt like there was like no story happening. I just didn't feel invested, and at 30% I was just like, I think I'm out. So I don't know, the third book in this series just came out, and I've heard that it's really good, so maybe I'll try it, but this one just like wasn't doing it for me, so I just let it go. And then the last book I don't even want to talk about because honestly I feel like maybe I just wasn't in the right headspace whenever I decided to read it. It's The Co-op by Tara DeWitt. Dude, this book has been on my TBR for I can't even tell you how long. Like I've been saving it for a rainy day, and I was gonna buy the paperback. Like I was like, I'm just gonna go ahead and buy it because I know I'm gonna love it so much, but I decided to start it on my Kindle, and I just like, for the life of me, could not get into this book. So I need you guys to tell me if you've read it and you loved it. Let me know. I stopped it at 25%. I just found it to be a little bit, again, like the Same Time Next Summer book, I just thought the structure of it was a little bit strange to me because, at least from what I read, it's about this guy and this girl that growing up, their grandmas owned this duplex together, like each side of this duplex, and so they would go and kind of like spend the summers with their grandmas, and so they became friends, and over time, you know, eventually kind of became closer. They decided they were going to be like friends with benefits. Obviously, you know how that tends to go in stories, so something seemed to have gone wrong with the two of them, but now, present day, they are grown adults, and they are coming back because I guess their grandmas have passed away, and they are going to be fixing up this duplex to sell it. And the guy works as a contractor, so this is very much like his, you know, what he does, and the girl's just trying to get it sold, so they have to work together to get it fixed up. And you can tell, like, present day, there's a whole lot of tension between the two of them. You can tell that they used to very much like be in love, and one of them kind of wronged the other, whatever, but I just felt like the book needed flashbacks. Like it needed flashback chapters saying, you know, showing, like I like to be shown rather than told what has happened, and it was just a little bit odd to me because it was like dual point of view, like kind of alternating, like guy chapter, girl chapter, whatever, but instead of like flashing to the past, it would just be like random paragraphs where it's like in italics, and it's just like, I remember we went to like the drive-in movie theater and this happened and I pushed up her skirt and whatever, and it was just like little snippets of their past, and I'm like, I want to see your past, like I want to see what happened, like show me how you guys met and like how your relationship formed. And I don't know, again, I only got 25% into it, but I just like could not get into it. So if you guys loved this book, let me know because it is so up my alley, like all the tropes of it, the entire concept it's totally what I love. It's like my favorite type of book. So I was really shocked that I couldn't get into it, and I've heard nothing but good things about Tara DeWitt, so I'm dying to read her, but this one just like, I don't know. For whatever reason, couldn't get further. But yeah, guys, oh my god, this was a long video. Those were the about 19-ish books that I read this month. It was a very, very interesting month. If you guys read any of these books, I would love to hear all your thoughts on them. If you had any other books that you read in the month of June that you loved, let me know. If you have anything in the month of July that you're super excited about, also let me know. Yeah, guys, that is it for me today. Thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you very soon. Bye.